Sinners is honestly a great movie that captures culture from the 1930s in the US, a time period in which history was not kind towards people of color. With that horrific historical setting set in place, we are also bringing in the lore of vampires as well, which adds more spookiness into the air. Almost every part of the movie is beyond amazing that you don't even realize that it takes over 40 minutes to introduce and establish the characters of the film, as well as establishing the setting of that time period. Since they spend over 40 minutes of the movie showcasing the depth of each of the characters, we are firstly introduced to the main character, Sammy, right off the bat. The opening scene starts with a narration not about vampires surprisingly, but rather bringing in an introduction of these powerful individuals in the community that have many names. They are called Philly, firekeepers, or griots, depending on one's culture, and these individuals are pretty much their musicians, right? Who can bring healing to the communities through their music. But the downside is, it can also attract evil. Transitioning from the narration, we are informed of the setting of the story that will soon unfold, Mississippi. And I do want to put in a little appreciation and love for the transition of the red-eyed creature's eyes mirrored into the sky, kind of showing the application of lore into reality in this story, which we will see soon enough. Then the scene continues, showing a young man driving a car, and if you don't look too closely, you might just think you're witnessing a character just casually driving, but as the scene continues, you see that there is blood all over his shirt. He's kind of walking in a limp, and there's a big long gash wound on his face, possibly caused by an animal or a monster. From this moment, we are introduced to the protagonist of the film, Sammy. He interrupts Sunday worship, and we're given a handful of scary jump scares right off the bat. Sorry about the jump scares. Editor me, I wanted y'all to be on your toes. Watching the movie my first time, this scare definitely jumped me, mainly because we are only a few minutes into the movie, y'all, and the pop-up jump scare definitely got me engaged. The pastor then wants Sammy to promise to him, the whole church, and to God to leave his sinning ways. Before we even get an answer from Sammy, we are then moved on from the opening scene, bringing us back a day before, showing us the real beginning of this story that we are about to witness. Already on a great start, with the opening scene introducing the protagonist in such a mysterious way, but giving us viewers enough context to piece the story as we continue to be engaged. We see Sammy again on the screen. From the close-up of him picking cotton to the wide shot, we see that he is the only one there working the fields. From this moment, we're actually getting a sneak peek of his voice through his humming and his quiet singing. We see him then departing the fields as others are just coming in, showing us that he is a diligent worker by meeting his quota before the sun even rises. He wakes up his siblings and he goes to reach for something under his bed, but it seems like it's not there. Before we even understand what he was trying to reach for, we are moved on to twins, aka Smoke and Stack, aka Elias and Elijah, or Michael B. Jordan times 2. We see them share a cigarette as they are patiently waiting for something or someone. We don't really know yet. But another appreciation moment here, the way they did this scene, it really does look convincing that there are twins portrayed on the screen, that you don't even realize that it's just one actor playing these two characters. But anyways, moving on. So we see a white man approach them, and between a conversation they have with Hogwood is very rude. Like, he arrives to the showing late, either doesn't answer their questions, deflects their questions, or he just straight up lies to them regarding the mill he is trying to sell to them. Anyways, there's obvious, tension between the twins and Hogwood, but they ended up buying the place, though we don't know what they're going to do with the place as of yet. Next, we are introduced to the preacher, who is Sammy's father, from the opening scene, and we see Sammy walk into the church to obtain his guitar, which was the item he was reaching for under his bed earlier. His dad, the preacher, brought it in so that he can ask Sammy to help with the sermon the following day. A bit manipulative, if you ask me, but whatever. As the sermon will be about the verse 1 Corinthians 10:13, and it reads, "The temptations in your life are no different from what others experience. And God is faithful. He will not allow the temptations to be more than you can stand. When you are tempted, He will show you a way out so that you can endure. Pretty much meaning, God will not go out of His way to tempt you, but life is filled with temptations. And God will help you out of it, especially if you go to Him. This verse itself will be relevant later on in the film. In this scene of Samuel conversing with his father, I do want to, appreciate this scene because every time the camera was to pan back to the dad, it looks black and white. Behind him are just the white walls of the church, but behind Sammy, there are windows and flowing color coming into the scene, kind of depicting that his father has a very black and white mentality of life and of the world, but as for Sammy, he tends to be more open-minded about how he views the world. It's possibly he thinks like that because he's so young. Before Sammy is about to leave, his father gives him some advice. He says, "You keep dancing with the devil, one day he's going to follow you home," giving his son a warning of the consequence of constant sinning. We then hear honking, and guess who it is? A pair of Michael B. Jordans. I just love this line. I don't know which twin says it, but it's they say, "Got $2 out here waiting on a dime." I honestly thought that was just such an endearing line to say, especially towards a younger sibling or a younger family member. I just love it. So this is actually the first scene of the cousins together. They are catching up on each other's lives, portraying a real conversation one were to have with their fellow blood relative. And then they seem to stop in the middle of nowhere, only to remove shrubs to uncover a truck filled with goodies for later that night. But before they're about done, they are greeted with a snake. And this is seen as a bit gory, to be honest. The snake is literally stabbed on the side of its neck, leading it to hiss, and through its hissing seems to be gargling in its own blood. I kind of saw this as a foretelling of what lies ahead for one of the twins, because it is. Before we move on from this scene, we see Stack bring a glass bottle with him, which is actually an item that will be a segue to another scene, which will be introducing another character. So more of the side characters that are introduced is Bo, Grace, and their daughter Lisa Chow. So they are a family of... They are a Chinese-American family that lives in the Delta that owns 2 grocery stores, one for the black community and one for the whites only across the street. And a side appreciation out here, everyone seems to know the twins, so much so that they can distinguish who is who. As you can see during the scene where the thieves are shot by Smoke for trying to steal off his truck, he immediately looked at Smoke and he just knew which twin it is. Remind you, they are identical twins. So if they know them that well, it means they have a rep. Moving on. So we see the shift of the community when their daughter Lisa goes to the other store to get her mom. So the whole point of this interaction is Smoke is offering the Chows a job to help with opening night. It gives us the point of view of how a Chinese business owner was to operate on a mundane, day-to-day life during this time period. I love how the dynamic feels like old friends meeting each other after a long hiatus from one another. Like, they are surprised to see Smoke, but still have that same kind of banter with each other, especially with negotiating on the price for the new sign that they're opening for that night. We would also see Smoke buying some flowers, which will be a segue to another scene introducing another character. The next character we are introduced to is Delta Slim. Delta Slim is seen busking in public, playing the harmonica, and we see Sammy and Stack enjoying the music, and the whole point of this interaction is kind of like how it was with the Chows, is to hire Delta Slim to play at their juke joint later that night. And this is actually the first time we know the purpose of the mill that they just purchased earlier that day. So we also learned that Delta is also an alcoholic, and what sold him in taking the gig was dun dun dun, the Irish beer that Stack brought with him from the moment they picked up the truck. After Slim took the gig, Sammy and Slim do some busking together to advertise their new juke joint that will that will be opening later that night. And it's not just a regular opening, it's a grand opening, so it's a really big deal. And they invite all the black folks who want to continue enjoying the music that they're playing, that just come on down, come on to the juke joint, and this is a whole like advertising moment in this scene. So there are actually two other characters that are introduced in the same scene, but before we get into that, I want to dive a little bit more into the depths of Delta Slim during the scene after the introduction of Mary and Perline, where Slim shares about his close friend being lynched. You can feel the grief in his humming, and like it's as if he's trying to hum to stray away from crying in front of Sammy and Stack, pouring his grief into his music, which he tends to do. So the two characters we meet in the train station here is Perline. So she's a young black woman enjoying the busking and seems to specifically admire Sammy, though her introduction is very brief. It is very telling that she's like a love interest to Sammy, even though she's married. I don't really know how I feel about that, but I kind of saw Perline as a side character. Like, yes, she's relevant, but not so relevant compared to the other characters, like the Chows and the other characters. The next character after Perline that is introduced to us is Mary. As soon as Mary is introduced to us, we see her standing still as if she is a ghost, trying to take in what she is witnessing is real or not. Though she already knew it was Stack right away, she asked anyways, which leads to an intense interaction between the two, and this very scene is viral across the internet, especially when it came to advertising this film. Like, I saw this scene everywhere when this movie came out. The delivery of her lines and confidence in her love and genuine care for Stack, but also being quite pissed at how she was left hanging, showing us that she is not ashamed of expressing herself, especially when it comes to wanting to be with a black man. The confidence that she has, I would say it's a privilege that not a lot of the other characters have. Which honestly, I don't know if it's because she's white passing, and that might play into her confident character, as she is allowed to express herself more freely compared to everyone else. But we are shown the grief on her face as we learned that she buried her mother earlier that very day, and Stack is shown to be very cold towards her, as if he is forced to be cold towards her. So much so that he can barely make eye contact and even have his body face her. I like the interaction between the two. It makes us viewers want to know more about the lore between the two, like why did their dynamic shift, what was their love story, and etc. The next character we're introduced is Cornbread. Cornbread is kind of like Perline. He is like a side character, which is kind of funny because his name is literally Cornbread. He is a side. But the whole point of his interaction with Stack and Sammy is that he is being offered a job to be a bouncer at their juke joint because he's a big black guy, right? So I feel like every interaction with Cornbread is seen as comedic relief in this film, and I kind of like that, especially since this film feels like a mixture of genres all mixed together. A lot of people says that, and I do agree, it does feel like a mixture of genres all mixed together. But when you see Cornbread on the screen, you know it's a comedic moment. So I appreciate that. The next character we are introduced to is Annie. So we see Smoke come into the screen holding the flowers he bought from the Chows earlier, and we see a grave with a small human handprint, and we can clearly see that the grave is for someone who was very young, possibly a newborn. We see that there are offerings and something else by the grave, though we can't exactly piece on what it is or the purpose of it. But before we even look too long, we meet Annie. We see that they both are very direct towards each other and they don't beat around the bush, which results in them being honest and true with each other. Smoke gets to the point of his visit of opening a juke joint, and Annie immediately called out his BS. We learn that Annie is a hoodoo priestess and serves her community through her practice. The dynamic is actually quite peculiar because Annie is a full-on practicing hoodoo priestess, and Smoke is seen to be a complete skeptic, which leads to him stating, "You know, woman, I've been all over the world. There is no evil, just power. Which Annie answers back with, how do you and your brother still manage to be in one piece? My faith reaches you all over the world. When she talks, you can actually hear the power in her voice, with faint whispers layered onto her voice, kind of showing that she is going through the trenches of life not on her own, but with people not of this realm, aka her ancestors. And he shoots her with, why didn't you bring our baby back? And man, that just hits hard to the point where she doesn't know the answer to. And when she actually continues talking to Smoke, her voice was just on her own. There was no more layered whispers. The look on her face, it looks like she has just accepted life's miseries, yet still carrying her faith, even when the world has shown her little kindness. The next character that is introduced to us is Vampire Remick. He literally jumps onto the screen, which I think tells us later that he can fly. I'm not sure, but we see him burning and seems to be more afraid of those hunting him rather than feeling the burn from the sun. He pleads with some white folks who are clearly Klansmen and manipulates his way getting an invitation into their home. And the next people we are introduced to are the Choctaws. This is the only scene we actually see the Choctaws. So they are hunters that seem to be a group of men who are part of the Choctaw tribe, and the dead giveaway that Remick was there are actually the three vampires hovering over the house, and they tried to help the white people out but were shut down, and they just literally yeeted out of there because the sun is about to set. And the sun setting tells me that they have been hunting down this vampire all day, which means Vampire Remick had no time to rest from being hunted by the Choctaws. Also, side appreciation note here, when we saw the juke joint open up, which is actually the next scene after this, we can see the three vultures again, but they are hovering over and around the juke joint, meaning the vampires have been stalking the juke joint and all the guests since the moment they opened up, and waited until the right moment to make their move on trying to get invited inside. So as we continue, this is we're covering 40 minutes of the movie, but every introduction, every segue was smooth and ongoing. From Smoke buying the flowers from the chows in their store, to Stack making sure to grab a bottle of Irish beer to purposely open it in front of Delta Slim when trying to convince him to accept the new gig at the juke joint. There were no lost moments, no unnecessary backstory. Instead, every scene had a purpose to the overall story. No detail was left behind when director Coogler made this film. From the moment these characters were introduced to us, there was just added depth layered onto the characters as the story continued to unfold. With the tone of the film, it created the environment of allowing the characters to have a reaction to each other and the horror upon them. It wasn't a surprise to us that the characters reacted the way they did because we were given enough context that they would react that way. This film sets the uniqueness of the characters shown, their dynamics with each other on the screen, the tone of the setting. This allowed us as a viewer to make our own theories of what would be happening in the next scene, what will we see, where will be displayed. I hope you enjoyed my very first video. I am making more videos regarding the movie Sinners because I really like this movie. I think everyone should watch it, especially since I think it's nominated, I believe. I'm not really sure. I'm not really up to date on that. But please like and subscribe to stay tuned. Also, please comment on a movie recommendation, as I'm currently curating my top 100 films, and I'm in a dire need of more movies to dive into. So thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next one.